ഡോക്ടർ വി രാജാകൃഷ്ണൻ ആധുനിക മലയാള സാഹിത്യ നിരൂപണത്തിന് അടിത്തറയിട്ട നിരൂപകനായ ഡോക്ടർ വി രാജാകൃഷ്ണൻ ഇംഗ്ലീഷ് അധ്യാപകൻ എന്ന നിലയിലും വിദ്യാർത്ഥികൾക്ക് പ്രിയങ്കരനാണ്. തിരുവനന്തപുരം യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി കോളേജിലും ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂട്ട് ഓഫ് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിലുമായിരുന്നു കോളേജ് വിദ്യാഭ്യാസം. ദീർഘകാലം ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂട്ട് ഓഫ് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ അധ്യാപകനായിരുന്നു. അമേരിക്കൻ ഗവൺമെന്റിന്റെ സീനിയർ ഫുൾബ്രൈറ്റ് ഫെലോഷിപ്പും കനേഡിയൻ ഗവൺമെന്റിന്റെ ഫാക്കൽറ്റി റിസർച്ച് ഫെലോഷിപ്പും ഉൾപ്പെടെ നിരവധി ദേശീയ അന്തർദേശീയ ബഹുമതികൾ ലഭിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. UGCയുടെ പ്രൊഫസർ എമിറേറ്റ്സ് ആയും പ്രവർത്തിച്ചു. സാഹിത്യ നിരൂപണ ശാഖയ്ക്കു പുറമെ ചലച്ചിത്ര നിരൂപണത്തിലും ഡോക്ടർ രാജാകൃഷ്ണൻ സംഭാവനകൾ നൽകിയിട്ടുണ്ട്. രോഗത്തിന്റെ പൂക്കൾ, വിതുമ്പുന്ന പാനപാത്രം, എന്റെ രാഷ്ട്രീയ ലേഖനങ്ങൾ തുടങ്ങിയവയാണ് പ്രധാന കൃതികൾ. പാലക്കാട് സ്വദേശിയായ ഡോക്ടർ രാജാകൃഷ്ണൻ ഇപ്പോൾ തിരുവനന്തപുരത്ത് താമസിക്കുന്നു.
Good morning to all of you. It's long years since I bade goodbye to a teaching profession. Now I am asked to reconstruct a scene from one of my previous incarnations. Yeah, I take it as my previous incarnation. What has changed during these years? Maybe I haven't changed much. The stage sets remain almost the same. Only faces have changed. But the world has changed irrevocably. I do realize with a pang that I belong to an older generation. The idea of teaching, or rather the very idea of a classroom has undergone a sea change. For example, the notion of a physical classroom was given a go by during the pandemic. All of you, I think, willingly or unwillingly switched over to the online mode of teaching. So the very notion of a physical classroom, many feared, was slowly vanishing. The relation between the teacher and the taught, and that too has undergone a change. Again, teaching technology has changed vastly. Technology has come into teaching. Now you cannot think of a classroom without visual aids. One of the most discussed works of all times, Hamlet by Shakespeare. Hamlet undoubtedly is the most analyzed, most discussed play of Shakespeare. In fact, you can spend a whole lifetime reading up the critical works, articles, books, studies that have grown around Hamlet. And still you wouldn't have exhausted, the whole bulk of Hamlet criticism. I'm not exaggerating. You can spend a whole lifetime without reading anything at all, reading only Hamlet criticism. Studies on Hamlet, articles, reviews, old-time reviews, full-length studies can fill up, whole libraries. Next only to Jesus Christ, assuming that, Jesus was a literary figure. Next only to Hamlet. Next only to Jesus Christ, Hamlet is the most discussed literary figure in the world. Followed by Kafka and then by Samuel Beckett. So this inexhaustible richness and variety of Hamlet criticism, this unanalyzable quality of readings on Hamlet, this inexhaustible variety of critical viewpoints that have played around this play is something stupefying, because no other play by Shakespeare, by any other playwright, has invited so much of critical dissection, so much of critical analysis, and still, like the smile of Mona Lisa, Hamlet continues to baffle you. The play Hamlet continues to baffle you, continues to elude your grasp. You may read up all that has been written on Hamlet and still you will be unable to pluck out the heart of the mystery. I am quoting from the text that centers around Hamlet. What really constitutes this Hamlet mystery? There are two major problems in world literature: Hamlet problem, then the Kafka problem. Kafka also remains a highly elusive, inscrutable figure. No amount of analysis, no amount of critical discourse can pin down Kafka. Again, almost every conceivable school of literary criticism has crashed its teeth at this play. The Freudian, Marxist, sociological, archetypal or Jungian. Almost every school of criticism has tried its tricks around this play. Still this play defies a clear-cut analysis. Still the questions posed by the play elude clear-cut answers. Even the name Hamlet, has passed into common parlance. You speak of a person, he is a Hamlet-like character. Moving over to the numerous adaptations of Hamlet. This play has been adapted into film in various cultures and nationalities. There have been umpteen films made under the caption Hamlet. You have a Russian Hamlet, you have a British Hamlet, you have a Hollywood Hamlet, all played by actors of proven talent, highly accomplished actors. Hamlet has continued to generate interest in film world as well. And the clear index for this is the number of films that has grown around this play. Almost all of them carrying the caption Hamlet. But they are all different types of, they all offer different types of Hamlet. Actually, as a critic has rightly put it, there are as many Hamlets as there are readers. There are as many Hamlets as there are readers. Speaking about the West, almost every century, almost every age had its own Hamlet, its own image of Hamlet. 18th century had carved out a particular image of Hamlet, which underwent the change with the coming of Goethe and the Romantics. You had a romantic Hamlet, epitomized by Coleridge. I recall his famous statement, "I think I have a smack of Hamlet in me." He saw Hamlet as somebody like him, You know who was Coleridge? A poet, a critic, a philosopher lost in a haze of opium. In the modern period, there was only one poet critic who came up with the rather heretical suggestion that the play is an artistic failure. It was T.S. Eliot. He said the play is an artistic failure. It was in this essay on Hamlet that he came up with this theory or idea of objective correlative. Well, we'll take it up later. Again, I am thinking of a well-known painting on Ophelia by a pre-Raphaelite painter named John Millais. It's called Ophelia. A haunting picture of Ophelia, floating in the stream with petals falling on. You have seen the painting? Great. How did you come across it? Casually or? I see. By John Millais. Yeah. He was the pre-Raphaelite painter. It's called Ophelia. Ophelia seen as floating in the stream with petals falling on her. Nature almost sucks her in. She becomes part of nature. Again, there have been adaptations of Hamlet in theatre, in short story, or in novel. For example, 5 years ago, I'm told there was a Hindi film. Unfortunately, I don't recall the title. Which tried to extrapolate the story of Hamlet in the Kashmiri situation. Haidar, exactly, Haidar. A Kashmiri youth caught in the cross currents of state-sponsored terrorism and Islamist terror, seen as the modern version of Hamlet. You have seen the movie? Unfortunately, you have seen the movie. How is it? It's an adaptation of Hamlet. It's a reworking of Hamlet, right? To be or not to be, that's all enough. Yeah. Yeah, a sensitive young man who is caught in the cross currents, state-sponsored terrorism and Islamic terror, right? Kashmiri youth. Yeah. There was a path-breaking book on on Shakespeare, which appeared in my youthful days, in my college days. That was penned by a East European critic named Jan Coates. It's a very insightful book, a much discussed book. Shakespeare, our contemporary, by Jan Coates. He's a East European critic. He tried to read into the play the existing situation in totalitarian communist regimes in Eastern Europe, especially Poland and Czechoslovakia. And in the course of his reflections on the play, I recall that he has come up with a very interesting observation. Had Hamlet and Ophelia been living today, they would have been wearing jeans and shirts. There is a major work in Malayalam, with which I am sure all of you are familiar, which carries echoes from Hamlet. Without being boastful, I wish to say that I was the only person who was able to detect it and wrote about it. I once had a discussion about this with the author. The author is none other than O.B. Vijay. There are echoes of Hamlet in Kazakh Idihasam. Vijay readily granted my reading. He said, "You are right." In fact, in the course of my writing, the echoes became too manifest, too conspicuous. I deliberately cut them out. You are quite right. There are echoes of Hamlet in my book. Actually, at one point these echoes grew out of my control, so I consciously, deliberately cut them out. I shall passingly mention one or two points. This question of knowing and not knowing, this directly takes you back to Hamlet. Again, the dilemma faced by Ravi and Hamlet is the same. Loss of faith in woman, the crash of the image of the woman, woman's faithlessness coming as a rude shock, and the resultant sense of cynical disillusion. That's a core of the moral dilemma experienced by Ravi as well as Hamlet. In Ravi's case, it was the act of seduction by Chittamma. In Hamlet's case, it was the incestuous marriage of his mother with his uncle. But the sense of the faithlessness of woman leads both Ravi and Hamlet to a state of disgust with sexuality, a state of cynical disillusionment. So in multiple ways, Hamlet has influenced the course of Western literature in the form of adaptations, in the form of reworking, then echoes, resonances. Hamlet has really infiltrated into the psyche of the Western man over the last 5 centuries. The 19th century literary critic had come with an interesting observation. You know, in Greek tragedy, the fight is between man and fate, man versus an inscrutable fate, a mysterious fate. And finally, the hero is beaten. He is beaten by an unassailable, mysterious fate. But in the case of Hamlet, the first time in Western literature, the dialogue of the mind with itself had begun. The dialogue of the mind with itself had begun in Hamlet. Throughout the play, you find Hamlet wrestling with, imponderable questions. Starting with the question of revenge, he moves on to the ultimate issues of man. You find him meditating over the unending mystery of the human condition. And what really fascinates you, what really grips you in the play is what you call the phenomenological mystery, the ontological mystery of the central character, Hamlet. His complex, divided inner life. This play was built around a crude revenge tragedy. This play, which was written somewhere around the year 1602, was based on a crude revenge tragedy. A son trying to avenge his father. A son trying to avenge his father. A dispossessed prince, trying to get back his lost kingdom. So, Kidd's Spanish tragedy actually formed the bedrock of the play. But then Shakespeare refined out of it, a highly poetic play, rich with philosophical statements, which centers around, the insoluble mystery of the human condition. Shakespeare has fashioned a play dense with philosophical statements, metaphysical reflections. So, there you have Hamlet, the play before you, always eluding your grasp. The more you try to analyze, the more the play recedes from your grasp. Again, the question of Hamlet's madness. Is he mad really, or is he pretending to be mad? Earlier in the play, having known the gravity of the crime committed by Claudius, Hamlet says, "From now on, I will put up an antique disposition." So, is his madness a facade? Is it a put-on thing? Or does Hamlet, in the course of his pondering over the question of revenge, really becomes mad? Does at some point in the story, in the plot, Hamlet lose his mind? Again, this question has never been satisfactorily answered. Is he pretending to be mad, or does he genuinely, not exactly go to pieces, but does he genuinely lose control over his reason, as Elizabethans would have said, in the course of the play? It's very difficult to answer the question. By his own confession, he at some point decides to put on an antique disposition. But then we do find that, his words, especially his quibbles, the way he uses verbal pun, and some of his outbursts really defy reason. They look like the ravings of a person who has lost control over his sense of reason. So, can we really trust his faculties, that he is in full possession of his faculties, or does he lose his reason in the course of his intolerable wrestling with the question of revenge? This question again remains unanswered. But let us pick up some other threads in the play. There is something rotten in this state of Denmark, one of the characters says, right? Early in the play. Surely, Denmark is a prison. Denmark is a prison. It's a place full of decoys, spies. It's a rotten place. Again, there is a critic. You might have read her, Caroline Spurgeon, who wrote a very illuminating book on Shakespeare's imagery. She has identified the nature of the imagery in Hamlet. The images of decay, the images of gross decay, of sickness dominates the play. There is the preponderance of the imagery of sickness and decay in the play. And Denmark is seen as a place which has fallen down the scale, It's a place inhabited by spies, decoys. It's a place where morality has given a go by, where people have almost accepted the incestuous marriage of Gertrude with Claudius. It is in this prison, this prison-like world, that Hamlet and Ophelia find themselves. As Jan Gott put them, as Jan Gott put it, two lovers who are caught in this web of deceit and lies. The place is full of deceit and lies, and Hamlet and Ophelia are irrevocably caught in this horrible web. They're unable to find their way out. Again, think of the way Hamlet treats Ophelia. After Ophelia's death, Hamlet makes a bombastic statement. I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers with all their love wouldn't have matched my love. But what does he actually do with her? He speaks daggers with her. He hurts her. He terribly hurts her. He almost drives her into madness. Ophelia drowns herself as a mad woman. The most haunting scenes in the play is, the scenes portraying Ophelia's madness. He is less than human to her. He acts in a cruel fashion to Ophelia. And he has his own reasons. As he sees Ophelia, in her kneeling posture, she looks like the image of innocence, the image of purity, the pristine image of innocence. But who knows whether she is a decoy? She is a decoy sent out by her father Polonius, who is a courtier. This is the carnal issue that Hamlet struggles with, The incestuous haste with which his mother married his uncle, the usurper, who had murdered his father. That came as a rude shock to him. In fact, you can see the entire play as depicting Hamlet's youthful crisis of identity. A person undergoes crisis at various points in his life. Adolescence, youth, you have midlife crisis, then old age crisis. If Hamlet is taken to be a 30-year-old scholar, even about Hamlet's age, questions have been raised. How old is Hamlet? We can try to find out. There is no finality about that either. Apparently, he has returned from the university, so he is a scholar in his late 20s or early 30s. Well, it's safe to assume that Hamlet undergoes a midlife crisis. At the heart of the midlife crisis is his lost faith in the chastity of woman. Frailty Thy name is woman. Yes. We cannot trust woman because his own mother had proved to be deceitful, and her marriage with Claudius was the ultimate of immorality, unethical behavior. So that is the starting point of Hamlet's interrogation of the world around him. There is no certainty about some of the basic things, of the basic questions posed in the play. And that's why T.S. Eliot called the play an artistic failure, because it leaves so many loose ends, so many questions, so many unresolvable questions. Eliot, his suggestion was that the emotions were disproportionate to facts in the play. Shakespeare was not in full control over his material, and hence the play is an artistic failure. Hamlet organizes a mousetrap play. The play is the thing with which I shall catch the conscience of the king, Claudius. Mousetrap play which reenacts the murder of, the old Hamlet. And Claudius is visibly moved on watching the play. Even the queen is perturbed. There you hear that phrase, the lady protests too much. The lady protests too much. This is a play which, unsettles your firm beliefs. This is a play which makes you rethink on life, which challenges your settled convictions. You can connect the predominance of the questions, the literary device of questions used in the play to this emotional content of the play. Here you can count up, the question format in the play. This is a play which is clearly in the interrogative mood. O.V. Vijayan has used a similar device in Khasakinte Idihasam. That novel also contains several questions. And Vijayan uses, pauses. അറിഞ്ഞുകൂടാ ആ പൊരുളിലേക്ക് നോക്കിക്കൊണ്ട് രവി ഇരുന്നു. എന്തുകൊണ്ട് രവി സ്വയം ചോദിച്ചു, അയാൾ അറിഞ്ഞില്ല. Taking dots. Vijayan has frequently resorted to these pauses, question and as well as pauses in the play to show the troubled nature of Ravi's psyche. So the interrogative mood which is sustained in the play is a pointer to the play's emotional content. Again, critics have pointed out the lingering note of sexual disgust in Hamlet's speeches and soliloquies. The rather pointed references to the defilement of sex that informs, Hamlet's soliloquies and speeches. Sexual nausea informs a large part of Hamlet's speeches and soliloquies. Even in small comments, get thee to a nunnery, he tells Ophelia. Nunnery has two meanings associated with it. Throughout the play you find, Hamlet obsessed with the question of the rottenness of sex. Sexual disgust, that's a defining feature of his speeches and soliloquies. And the scene of her death is one of the most moving scenes penned by Shakespeare. Ophelia going mad, and Ophelia speaking to herself, her soliloquizing, and her death by drowning are one of the most moving, pathetic scenes in the entire Shakespeare canon. Again, the relation between Hamlet and Horatio. I once told Vijayan, you were unconsciously influenced by the relation between Hamlet and Horatio while you portray the relation between Ravi and Madhavan Nair. Vijayan readily granted. But this all off the record. Consciously, Vijayan would not have admitted to these readings. There is the lingering influence of Hamlet in Khasakinte Idihasam. From my part, I wrote about it. In the course of my
detailed study of novel. Horatio actually compliments Hamlet. He is loyal to Hamlet. His personal loyalty is above question. Horatio is the practical type. He is essentially pragmatic. And unlike Hamlet, he can see through the appearance around him. He sees the road around him with some clarity. Horatio is given he is given the right to utter a profoundly moving farewell to Hamlet. Good night, sweet prince. What is the next line? Flight of angels. Sing to thee, flight of angels, sing to thee. Here cracks a noble heart, he says. The last word on Hamlet is uttered by Horatio, as it were. But he is the pragmatic type. He is the average man, in contrast to the irrational man that Hamlet is. He is the average man. He is the steady, loyal friend, the pragmatic person who clearly sees his way, who offers Hamlet sound advice at all points. So the relation between this pair, Hamlet and Horatio, is cleverly structured in the play. The contrast they offer, Hamlet and Horatio. And in the end, the stage is strewn with corpses. The stage is strewn with corpses. You can count them up. Who are the ones lying there? Come on, let's count them. Yes, Claudius still. Gertrude, she stands. Sorry? Right. Hamlet. Lartus. Stage is strewn with. This is the end of the story of bloody revenge. The revenge has been accomplished. The mission has been fulfilled. But at what terrible human cost. But that's the way, all Shakespeare tragedies end. Again, confirming to Bradley's analysis, at this point Bradley is correct. In the end, you have a representative of sane humanity taking over the stage, taking over the kingdom. Hamlet, Macbeth and Othello are, in our parlance, abnormal persons, right? They are not normal human beings like you and me. But in the end, who takes over? Young Fortinbras. Who is the representative of average humanity? Sensible, practical, clear-headed. Shakespeare always gives the last word to this representative of of average humanity.
I still recall that, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated and when O.V. Vijayan was a cartoonist, he carried a cartoon was the Hindu Times of India, which carried this line, "Good night, sweet prince, may flight of angels sing to thee."
So we haven't discussed much about the Freudian readings of Hamlet.
Yes,
which is very
Ernest
interesting.
Jones, his theory of Hamlet. Actually I didn't take up Marxist, Freudian, Jungian, that's a different terrain altogether. Since you have posed the question, I shall answer in one line.
That stands, sir. But if we read it in a Freudian way, we can answer his reason of procrastination, can't we?
What do you mean?
He hesitates because he himself knows of his guilt of being attracted to his mother in an incestuous way, and yes, he has committed the greatest sin in a way.
But where is the proof?
So even though I fully enjoy the freedom of it, my retired life, sometimes I miss being a teacher. Yeah, that's a particular thrill, particular enjoyment in being a teacher, addressing a classroom, interacting with students. But those things happened in my last incarnation. Gone are those days. Okay, any other question?